Do 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 do. Looks like I got my technical issues sorted out here. Hey everybody, how you doing? How you doing? Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. We have not kicked off yet because I haven't seen the couch bot fire. If you've joined me before, you know the drill. I'm always waiting to leave the station. I have these little automatic bots that fire off in various places when I go live with the live stream here on the YouTubes, and those haven't happened yet. So this is kind of like the pre-show. It's like the pre-show before the show. That would be the pre-show. It's really the pre-show to the pre-show because I always have like a monologue for the show. Hope you're doing well where you are. Hope things are calm and safe and coming back together. We got a busy morning this morning. It's like, wow, nobody wants to stay home during COVID, but during the protest, everybody's just staying home working on their stuff. Like everybody. I just went through the list and I think I got it's like a bomb went off outside. Jesus. Yeah, I've got at least Kara, James, Katie, Rebecca, Luigi, Melanie. Like everybody's running through this morning. So that's a good thing though. That's a good thing. Hey, I like having something to do. No, I'm gonna meet with Rebecca and Tedgel. Got a Tedgel sighting later today, so that's all good. Additionally, we released some, or we're in the midst of releasing a lot of new material. I was working on updating the job tracker overnight, getting it moved along. It's now not so much of a spreadsheet. It is a spreadsheet, but it's a nicer spreadsheet. And kind of getting some material around that because I know a lot of you are getting closer or you're into that job hunt phase, and I can tell you that just trying to hold all that in your head as you go through is trouble. But hey, ta-da! Couchbot has fired, so we can get this underway, and I think that's a good thing to do. As I get like a sleepy, sorry, there was like a little sleepy in my eye. We gotta get this underway because we've got so much to work through. We could be here for 4 hours. All right. Greetings, Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. It is time for the feedback loop, where we take a rapid fire, and boy, do we have a lot to work through today. I believe there's 7 people that have submissions in. 7 students have submissions in this morning. Super excited to see the wide range of material. So I'm just going to jump into it. Let's share the screen and go. So let's start here with Katie. Katie's first up, and Katie's first up mainly because it was here first. Not taking these in a particular order. All right, so she's on exercise 2 of type. And the whole point of exercise 2 is to give you an opportunity to really study the typography. Like in the prior type exercise, it was all about here's some preset type, and what do you notice about it? Can you define the parts? Now we're all into, all right, let's really jump into type and study it for a second, and look at it in depth. And she's got Muli, Playfair Display, Montserrat, and Volkov. It's always fun for me when you get into these exercises because I'm familiar with Playfair Display. Everybody's used that. I'm familiar with Muli. I'm familiar with Montserrat. Never seen Volkov before. And I shouldn't say that because maybe I have, and it does look familiar. It does look familiar. That K is very distinctive. Like it doesn't connect. I would think that I would remember a K that operated like that. But and does it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's very interesting. And yeah, I say that all the time. Oh, yeah, that's very interesting. it's also one of these one of the interesting things that you'll notice about typography is a lot of times like you'll rarely, if ever, I can't remember of an instance where I have ever seen an italicized G that did not have the larger counter. Here they switch. You go from an old style G to a more modern G, and the counters and the setup changes altogether. So as we go through, you'll see it's there with Mooley. Oh, Playfair Display does have one. Well, that's interesting. So some typography changes, but that's one of the rare instances where that happens. Another thing I want to point out while we're here, anytime you see the word display, that means that typography is really intended for large display settings. Like you're gonna, just it's gonna be a headline. It's gonna be your hero. It's not gonna be teeny tiny type. Okay, it's not gonna be used on paragraphs, as you will see why down below. This just gets really hard. Like this, really easy to read. This, not so easy to read. You look over here at Mooley, and you can see that Mooley. The difference here that pops out right away is, all the headlines show up nicely, but you get this extra light on a paragraph, and it's very difficult to read. Where you use extra light on a headline, it's just fine. Okay, so the weight of these things, the weight matters where you use it. All right, paragraph down here, just fine. We move over Montserrat. Very familiar with Montserrat. One of the things that I like to point out to new users of typography is that the family. There are some families out there that are very limited, and when you begin looking at typography, if you hop on like Google Fonts, it's very easy to end up with crap typography. All right, and I hope that you watched the video I released on how to kind of go through and say, wow, there's like 1,000 fonts here. How do I find the ones that are actually good? I released a video a while back on how to go in and purposefully search through something like Google Fonts or Typekit, because there are certain typefaces that they lack italics, and like if you're going to use a typeface for any sort of paragraph text, you have instances if you're going to use proper grammar, you have instances where we really rely on italics. So you just can't use certain typography if it lacks an italic. I don't see an example of that here, but I do see a couple of, like Volkov and Playfair Display, very limited ranges. Okay, so like regular to black, but at least Playfair has an italic. Volkov down here is even more limited. Although I really do like the serifs on this. It's very chunky. It reminds me of is it Merriweather that I'm thinking of? Might be Merriweather. But a nice serif. I do believe that serifs have a place. And here, this is very easy to read. This is probably a little too bold. These typefaces, very nice. One thing that always shoots down typefaces typically are when they have very odd character structures. Like the K here. The K here is very subtle. That's a real oddity to see that not connect, but it's so subtle that I think it makes it distinctive more so than kind of it doesn't become an oddity. Montserrat is Montserrat. Everybody loves a Montserrat. Let's see. Did you adjust as you went? Can't tell. These typefaces are so close to one another. It's almost like they all fit. No, okay. couldn't have adjusted here. Like the cap height and the ascender height lines are not adjusted in the back. And really, when we're looking at this, when we're looking at this line actually sets right there on the baseline. You've got, it's called overhang for a reason, because it hangs over. Same thing here, although that's basically it. What's interesting here when you really look at the typography is it's pretty clear the A might be on the baseline, but the bowl of the G floats above it. Look at that little bit of difference between the two. Like, that's going to hang over the baseline, but this somehow floats above it. And those are little things that, I can tell you, I've been using typography for years, and I always find new little oddities when I really study typography. And that's consistent to the italic. Let's see what else. Also, another thing that a lot of people might not realize is, on Playfair Display, notice that that's not a straight line at the bottom. It curves up and into the character. Does the same here. This one curves down. A lot of little intricate details to this typography. And then here, this is very, just slab. Even though it's not necessarily a quote slab, it's very slab-like. All the little, little refined details have been kind of lopped off. It's kind of like it's been made with a machete or something, or like an axe. I'm just gonna kind of. It's so nice, and it's I love it. That stuff's just great. All right, so let's take a look at application, because this is just like you're looking at type specimens. Let's go in and look at how you applied. That's the important thing here. There. Yep. Come on, Figma. There you go. All right, so application of typography. So we've got. So Katie was given this typography. Was given this content audio AI, so she's got a label here. And I really do need to kind of keep my tools open as much as I'd like them. So that's Mooley paired with Volkov. One quick thing here, that's, this is, sorry, I need to undo it. Watch out for instances where you have a tick mark. That's a tick mark right there. You want a quote, and that's probably over here. If I had to guess, is that over here? Yeah, it's coming straight over from the text. So watch out for those. You don't want any tick marks in your work. Tick marks is like feet and inches instead of a apostrophe. So look out for that. This is relatively nice though. Mooley light italic, Mooley regular 18. So this is where I think you might, you've used space here pretty well to like separate these out. This is where I might come up and say, okay, you're 22 and you're going to be, you're going to be closer to. So, and maybe this is closer to as well. And basically this all kind of forms a unit together. And then this typography is kind of down below. There's some space. Or you might do it the other way. You might say, okay, this is all going to make space for, maybe it's a 2-line head, and if it doesn't wrap, you just kind of give it the extra space. There's lots of different ways that you can use space in your informational architecture and design to kind of determine how you want to create a style, because this construction isn't a style by itself. It's when it's replicated through a site that it becomes a style. It becomes what you expect to see. And I think that this is like your usage of typography is fine. I might just go up with this one a bit to help it separate out. You could also come in here with the audio. I don't know if it needs 24. A lot of times this stuff like labels go down, but then we'll do something like, okay, we'll make it black, and then we'll make it 20% or something to make it stand out, but yet it's standing out, but yet it's smaller. Okay, so a couple things to think about there as you're working through it. Let's continue moving on. So here is this is something saying, okay, well there's content above and there's content below, and how do you handle this information? And you've decided to go through and set up the reset podcast. That's a labeled button. So a button, it's a button. There's a lot of different ways that you can create a button. One of the things that, and I'm going to ungroup this for a second. When we start talking about a button, we're talking about the shape, and we haven't, this again is kind of pulling into the next phase here, because you're going to be creating more of these as you go. I think, play fair display here is fine. The reset podcast, it's Mooly at 24. Is it too big? Typically speaking on labels, I tend to end up pushing them down in size. Just like I did a moment ago. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's make that black, or let's make it black italic, and then let's do the 20%. Pulling this up. This is also where line height comes in. Like this right now, it's just got an auto line height of 48, which is like 120%. And actually 120% like pulls it together a little more. So if we said 36, not 36%, but 36, let's get rid of the percent sign. That's like 100, okay? It's 36 and 36. Say 48, that's actually like 125, all right? I really think the thing you're going for is typically like 105, 105%. That tightens, and this is specific to headlines. Headlines need to often tighten up. And then you'll probably leave this at auto. And then, I want to back up because I want to kind of like make a copy of this, because I've made a lot of changes already, and I think it's best to like copy this stuff over to the side. And again, I could do this all day long. I love typography. Okay, so we talked about this. Like, this is like 125% on the line height. We want to get this closer to like 105, and I've even done things that are like 95. That a lot of that depends on the actual typography you're working with. So there is a range for headlines. Then I would come in here and with Mooly, I might, you can go the other way with it too. You can go, hey, you know what? I'm going to make this italic, and I'm going to make this 100, and it's like, wow, Chris, that's crazy. And I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to make it like 14. And like, again, you can do a lot to create style, all right, with spacing and size. I think your deck, the deck here is just right on. But again, it comes back to this button. Like, what do we do with the button? And the button is typically where I will come in and I will add auto layout. And you're like, what the hell is auto layout? Auto layout gives it basically padding all the way around that. And then we can come in and say, okay, we've got our frame. Let's grab the frame. Let's fill it with, and I'm going to just say, oh, I lost it. Let's go say it's black. All right. So now we've got this. I'm going to line it up back on the grid. I'm going to come in here with the typography. I'll make that white. And now that's a button. Okay. Now we could do a lot more with this button. We could actually, we can make this go down in size if we want it. 6 is ridiculous, Chris. 16 would be fine. We could also expand on this shape and say, oh, horizontally, it's going to have 20 spacing on the edges and 15 top and bottom. Or we could say, hey, it's going to be 5 and 5. However tight or big you want it to make it. If you want it to make it 30, you could. But I'll make it 5 and 10. And then, I want to just zoom out and take a look at the two side by side. And this is where you could go with a little nuance, okay? Same headline, same deck, same basic structure here, but we've put a box around it because it's a button. All we've really done is adjust its spacing and tweak the label, okay? My challenge to you is to take this a different direction. Adjust this a different way. Like, come up with your own button. Come up with your own label. Let's see what you can do. You've got all the pieces, and the combination isn't bad. It's so once you solve, can I combine typography? Can I come down here and say, okay, there's contrast between these two sets of typography. Once you have that, it comes down to style. It comes down to nuance. And once you master contrast, you're ready to move on to nuance. Okay. Now let's look here. We've got Taco John. Taco John. All right. Pre-order. I'm curious how you made that box. Yeah. So you grouped it. I'm like just gonna jump right on out there. When you're making these, just instead of using a box, use auto layout. And auto layout just gives you that box. This is interesting. And the trick here is that you're really trying to like come up, like everything has a different style. And you're not quite sure, okay, so what is it that I need to do here? And what I'm going to suggest that you do is you simplify this, okay? It's very possible that, this is a situation where everything just rides together, and I'm just going to bring this down here so we can take a look at it. Instead of this combination with Taco John, there are instances where we don't use a label, or we don't use a different font altogether. We work in weight, and a lot of times you'll see that in instances like this where there's just not a lot of information. Like, one of the simplest things to do here would be to combine this. This is Montserrat and this is Montserrat, and it's 13. There's no reason why these have to be on separate lines. And Figma's kind of giving me trouble here. Taco John, you've got closed here. I think it's fine to have it bold the way you have it. It's just, does that information really need to be so far away? And there's another way of looking at this. You got to keep in mind that, like, up here in this space, there's space around it because, frankly, Taco John could be a much longer restaurant name. So this could be right next to Sabor y Sazon. And I can't remember if that's how you spell taqueria or not. But these two things could be side by side in the same square. Like this is a square, that's a square. It just depends on how the information is set up. And one thing I like about auto layout, if we ungroup this for a second, one thing I really like about auto layout is if I set this up in auto layout, and I say, okay, this is now auto layout. It will sometimes do some quirky things to us when we're just getting this underway. But it will allow us to begin to push things around to where the information around it will automatically respond. So rather than having to do this little thing over here where I'm just like kind of moving it around manually, you know, if I was over here and I said, okay, Sabor y saison, because I'm using auto layout wherever it went to, yeah, there it is. Because I'm using auto layout, and you can kind of see the shape here, it's moving that around. You can add these buttons to it as well. You can add the labels. We'll get more into auto layout as you move through this, but the big thing to remember is that when you're doing this, so Taco John, you don't necessarily have to kind of figure out all the space, because there's going to be other bits of content around it. Also, you know, this, I can go in here and I can say, hey, you know what? That shouldn't be 36. Maybe it should just be, or it should be auto. Maybe it should just be 36. Okay. And now, you know, we've got this thing where it's trying to figure out, hey, what should the spacing be like? Because now it's, you know, I've made, you know, this is one thing about auto layout. You really kind of need to make your size adjustments before you begin doing tweaks like that, because obviously now auto layout's not quite sure what to do with it, because it's like, wait, you pulled that up. Why did you pull that up? You know, instead of Volkov here, you know, is this Mooley? Or no, that's Montserrat. If you just use Montserrat, and, you know, maybe this is 16. Again, it's the common habit of Chris is going small with the label again. Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be 16. Maybe 14 is fine. But again, I would tighten up this typography. There's no reason for it to kind of space itself out. You don't have to fill. You don't have to fill. Okay? You're trying to create units. And, you know, another thing I would consider doing here is I would consider, like, you know, whatever this was, having that pre-order button just locked to the bottom of the square. You know, have it just, okay, this information is going to be whatever this information is, and I'm going to have my pre-order button consistently in the same spot on every one. Just something to think about. Again, you're just beginning to work with typography. You're just beginning to apply it in space. This is the reality of design for, you know, projects, and I think that, you know, it's just something people have to get kind of used to. Taco John, all right, Taco John is back, and now it's moving in a different direction. You know, and this is, again, the reality. Except this time it's moving side to side instead of up and down. And I think that you've done a good job of kind of working with the space that you have. You know, what's interesting about these sorts of horizontal movements is that you need to really maximize the space you have available. Like right now, we haven't considered the fact that there might be a longer named restaurant, like a Sabor y Saison Taqueria in here. And if I just would align this up to the outside, then I would have room for my button off to the side, even though this line is much longer than the Taco John. Okay? So that's the first thing that I want to think about is how can I set this up so that I'm using the width of the mobile device efficiently. So when you're going side to side and you're in limited space, use all of it. Okay. Always leave just a little bit to the outside, because when you're designing for mobile, it's going right up to the edge of the phone screen, and you can't just you can't just read right up to the edge of the screen. You have to have that little wedge of space so the eye is not fighting with the screen, with the side of the screen. From here, there's a lot of interesting considerations. And again, we've got Taco John over here, so I'm not so worried about it. One would be, what to do with the pre-order button. I could make an argument that this is one of those situations where I would just go all the way up and down on the edge, and this would be pre-order. Okay? Like, it's just a button. But then you've got like buttons all the way down the side. That's not really great. I could also say, well, maybe pre-order doesn't start on this screen, right? That's unfair because you were given that as a parameter. Okay. Restaurant. This is the type of establishment you're looking at. Maybe you're on like a Yelp listing. The question here is, does that need the lead? Like, is it the name of the place, and then restaurant is below it to kind of explain, because if they're all restaurants, like I don't necessarily need that to lead, and maybe this is, maybe this is style of restaurant. So maybe this is Mexican restaurant, and like I might have a seafood restaurant below it for whatever reason. Depends on the search. Again, this is a situation where I don't necessarily know that we have to have these separate, but as we work through it, the other thing I want to kind of keep an eye on is, do I allow this to go across? Does it wrap? I don't necessarily know. Right now. I'm gonna go ahead and make that like light or regular. And I think what I want to do here, and keep in mind, you can talk to Eve or Luigi or Kara. I get super fussy about typography. So this is closed. Here it's, does this need more space? Like, it's 11. Does it need 14? Does it need 16? Not sure. It does need consistent spacing though, because these cells aren't going to grow. It's Mexican restaurant. It's closed. Next delivery 9:30 a.m. I could see that being italic the way you had it. You had that italic, and that's fine. And now the question is, okay, so what happens to the pre-order? Well, let's do the same thing we did before. Let's make that auto layout. Let's bring that back in. And let's fill that. The thing I like to do here is I like to look at, okay, well, what's my spacing like to the top and bottom? And maybe this is where I bring in a bold instead. So now, you've got typography. This can get long. It can also be Taco John. We've simplified up all the secondary listing information, And when you've given it a decent amount of space to go wide, you've lined up your pre-order button. So again, this name can go all the way across. The next question that you've got to ask in mobile is, okay, this is great and whatever, but do I really want that pre-order button on the front screen of everything? And I keep messing this up. You know, and again, this is so we can kind of compare construction here. Come on. This is you taking permission to move this information around, but also, you know, instead of worrying like, you know, is this light? Is this italic? Like just put it all in one box. Don't try to make separates. Line it pre-order to the side. However, what I would say is if this was like a real thing, what I'd probably have an image. I'd probably have an image right here. And it might go top to bottom, to be honest with you. But, you know, I would at least have this image. And this changes the dynamic. It's like a little thumbnail. It's probably a little square. And now you got Taco John right here. And then what typically happens is we get some sort of, and I'm just going to make one real quick. We get some sort of chevron. And again, I'm hacking around. That chevron's not very even, but you get the idea. And that chevron goes over here. Well, that is a very funky looking chevron. But that chevron goes over here, and it's just to indicate that there's another page. If I click on this, it'll take me to a page of details about that thing. Okay? But this is, you know, the big thing I want you to realize is that regardless of what I've done here, you know, I could get rid of the image. Don't necessarily have to have that. I want to take advantage of the space. I want to take advantage of the space. I want to simplify the arrangement, and I want to take advantage of the space. When we look at where we started out at, all those eons ago, probably feels like, you know, this was our structure, and it was just kind of hanging out in the middle, right? And that wasn't taking advantage of our space. So I'd like to take another stab at a few of these things with that information in mind. You know, it comes down to, are we using the space that we have? It also comes down to, are we thinking about what happens when the information changes? Because this information is dynamic, okay? And it's going to change. Are we creating with that next application of it in mind? A lot of times we're not. And that is nothing new for the designers. You know, every designer I've talked to, the first time they work with automated data, it's kind of mind-blowing because we're so used to controlling every pixel. And there I went like 30 minutes on typography. I apologize. All right, let's move over here. Fresh Market. I believe this is Kara. And all right, let's see what we got here. So Kara is jumping through, and yeah, this is Kara. So yesterday, when we first saw this, we were actually no, we didn't see this yesterday. We saw this a couple of days ago. Kara was really just starting to find the edges of her design. She was like beginning to work through the like, she had this wireframed out a specific way, but was unsure of like how far to push it. You know, am I just applying color here, or can I actually do some design work? And now she's really beginning to flex, in my opinion, the orange yellow is starting to act more as a unit. She had like a blue, if I remember correctly, there's like a blue in here before. Yeah, so this is went way warmer now, way warmer. Um, all right, let's move over here and see what we've got over here. Okay, so now this is really vibrant and 80s hot pink. Prepared meals from our kitchen to yours, like a very different feel from what we had just a minute ago. Icons, like the how it works is now expanded to really get you to focus on, and I like the triggers here. It's funny, these are the same triggers you had before. Explore plans, browse menus, get started. But now they feel, because they're organized vertically, they feel like a place where I should stop and kind of give my attention to it. I also like how the pink is now a definitive action color that you're using throughout. Learn more. Yeah, so we went with orange first. Now we're in pink, and now we're kind of putting more of an emphasis. We're putting less emphasis on the orange, but making it more functional as a color of function, calling attention to it as we go. How it worked, I think, between me and you, Kara, I think that I would probably make how it works come down just a bit, because it's like right here with preparing meals, prepared meals from our kitchen to yours. Like it's at that same hero size. About fresh market, like I would bring these three down together, and then and that way you allow this to kind of do its thing. Yeah, I think overall it's really nice. I will point to a couple of things that are gonna get fussy with this one. And it's kind of you've used the same image here. As this shrinks down, like when this gets responsive, this image is going to change, and as it changes, your typography probably is not going to like the tightness that you're going to get here. So it's something to think about. It looks great now, but as this becomes more responsive, working into specific shapes becomes a cruel beast to work around. So try to limit the amount of this that you're doing. I know that this is like a print instinct that's following you over to digital, but it is something that will drive you batty if you try to maintain control of all the pixels. One easy way to solve that is just to try to tighten this unit up to where there's more consistent space around. Another way to do that is in HTML and CSS, you could write media queries that would shrink this information down, or grow this image as it shrinks, basically using background size to grow it as it shrank. But you have to write a lot of really bespoke code for that. It's just something to keep in the back of your head, though, as you're moving through. I do like the fact that this is now moved in a couple of different directions. I really think the About Fresh Market section, it has evolved significantly from your initial point. The hero is the hero. It kind of it didn't move around a whole lot. We went from aligned left to centered, and that's nice. I do like the migration that your nav took. I really like the growth and exploration that you showed and how it works. I think now it's just get it into a Usability Hub Test, and I think you're good to go. And a lot of people have asked, okay, so how does that Usability Hub Test work? Like, how do I get that going? So I'm going to go over here to Usability Hub. And let's go ahead and go in. I'm going to sign in. It's always going to pull up the wrong account. Oh, it didn't pull up the wrong account this time. Okay. So, basically, the last time that I did a Usability Hub test with my personal account, it was to run this logo circuit test. All right. And the logo circuit test, I essentially came in and uploaded 4 logos and said, okay, what do you like more? And the interesting thing about this preference test is, simply select the logo you prefer from the 4 shown. It shows you how long it took the person to make their decision. You can also see, like, there's one logo that basically was like a split decision for people, and all the other logos that trailed it took significantly longer for it to resonate. So I do find that to be an interesting thing that Usability Hub gives you. It also tells you how many people that percentage represents, and you can filter your results appropriately. But that does not show us how to set one of these up. So I'm going to create a new test right here. And in creating that new test, we'll just call this one, we'll call this one Fresh Market for our purposes. And project, I will simply call this, well, it was Fresh Market. So we'll call the test name Homepage, and then we'll call the project Fresh Market. Allow participation on all devices, mobile only, desktop only. Because this is a desktop oh, I guess it's demonstration. Okay, fine. I have to never mind. I have to create the project somewhere else, and then I can name it that. And I need to spell homepage correctly. Over here, allow participation on, I would say desktop only, but the problem that you're going to get into there is that you're going to run into people that, frankly, are on their, like, you're going to send it to them, they're on their phone, and it's going to say, oh, this is desktop only, and they're not going to come back. So go ahead and go all devices. What you're really trying to do here is just preference test. You can also create a lot of other tests here as well. First click is always interesting. Because you're trying to see, like, this would be a way of seeing if you're new, or it's a way of running like a usability test without sitting there and hovering over them. And you'd ask a question like, so if you were going to start if you were going to begin using the service, what would you click? And they're going to they'd look at the screen, and then they click the thing. And then you go, thank you, and then it would show you a heat map of where everybody clicked. For us, I'm going to set up a preference test. And in preference test, you give it some instructions, and you basically say, I'm conducting a test for, or greetings. Greetings, we're conducting a test we're conducting a test of our new homepage. And would love your feedback. Simply select the homepage you prefer from the options listed. And that's all you got to do. All right. And then you add some files here. I'm just going to add some rando files for our purposes. So this is like a screenshot. Be a force for good, Uber. Okay, so we'll just add these 3. So I'll add this IBM screenshot. I'll add another screenshot. It's probably the same IBM. Nope, it's different. I don't know what that is. Okay, so we've added these, and then you could say, you know, follow-up questions. It would be something like, why did you select the, or what stood out about the home page you selected? And then you would say, you know, make it required so they can't skip over it. You know, give them long text or give them option. You can set up options. This is just like a survey. You can have them rank it. I'm just going to say give them long text and allow them to write an answer. And then you could you know, customize your thank you screen, or you could just kind of leave it there. It's up to you. If we saved and previewed this, you get an idea of what this is about. Hello there, you've been invited to participate in a short test. Start. Greetings, we're conducting a and view the images, and you can click on zoom. You can do that. Oh, I like this one. I'll choose this one. And then I like skylines or whatever, you know, and they continue, and thanks for the help. Okay, and it's always going to like say, hey, you could become a tester. This is because we're using Usability Hub for free, so it's going to like promote Usability Hub, and that's perfectly fine with me because Usability Hub otherwise is really expensive. Let's save and continue this. And then we can recruit participants. All right. And if you use Usability Hub, they can actually drive participants to your project. Okay. They make a lot of money doing that. All right. Because they pull in, they have thousands of people. That's one of the reasons why they're always recruiting participants. We're not going to go that direction. We're not going to go that direction because it's really expensive. We're going to go to the direction of set up a link. And so right now it says share a link with the participants to gather responses, limit number of participants. This says, oh, I want to upgrade to turn that on. Kiosk mode allows this test to be taken multiple times within a single session. I don't want that. I don't want redirect. I don't want... I would love demographic questions, but again, this is like an annual plan thing. I would love to know these things. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to enable the link. Here, the link has been enabled, and you can copy that link, and then you can go over to, you know, and you can manage it if you want it to. But again, that takes you back to this, so I'm going to cancel that. Copy that link. You hop over into Discord, and let's see here. I'm just going to say this is a dummy test based on the example, or the what is the word I'm doing? Demonstration. The feedback. And then you paste it in there. And it says fast user testing. And it's just a link back to Usability Hub. You click on that, and ta-da! Hello there, you've been invited to take a short test. Hit start. You do that. And off you go. All right, just works that simple. So Usability Hub, it's really fantastic. I like it a lot. That just gives you a quick walkthrough of how to do it. And I'll leave that page because I don't necessarily. But it really comes down to you're not going to use the panel, you're going to use your audience. All right? All right. Excellent work, though, Kara. I really do like the... I would love to find my way back to Figma. Where did Figma go to? Ah, there's Figma. Okay. Really good job there. And now we've made it through 2 in 45 minutes. Wow. Boy, I am moving about as slow as I could possibly move. Hi, Rebecca. How are you doing? Rebecca, I will see you in like, I don't know, a half hour. Let's jump in here. Actually, for this one, I've got to go back because I've been yapping so long, I've forgotten what I've been asked. So let's see here. Case study. Figma, what do you think of the user section and what I learned sections now? Okay. So first of all, let's go back up here to the top. Let's, sorry. Just trying to turn that off. Okay. The product, the pivot. Okay. The users. My client defined his new target users as my client defined his new target users as being anyone who hires people. Restaurants, retail, warehouses, construction sites, gyms, etc. Because of the expanding potential audience, my goal was to find the commonalities in these small business user groups. Find the commonalities between these small business, among these small business user groups. Yeah, I mean, that's in the general range. Some common struggles I found in my research were retaining professionalism in a smaller business setting, finding replacement employees on short notice, inability to trust employees to execute at a desired level. Unlike employees at a corporate ladder job, most employees in this space do not think of their work in a small business setting as permanent. Users reported viewing this type of work as more of an interim decision in their careers. The one exception to this rule was gyms. I think you could say the one exception to this rule were people who work at gyms, but semantics. Building employee loyalty in a short time frame and in a temporary situation can be challenging for a business owner. My suggestion for my client was to use language and design to personalize the interface, helping users feel more involved and at home. Okay. So conclusion, by focusing on a more specific user, my client found room in the market for a simpler, more affordable product for small business owners. So are we focusing on a specific user as in the employee or the business? And I think it's the employee. So what I would say there is, by focusing on the individual user rather than the broader business, my client found room in the market for a simpler, more affordable product to attract small business owners. Like, it's an expansion of that conclusion, but right now I can't figure out who is the user. I think the user, obviously the customer is the business, but that's not necessarily the user. So what I learned, #usability. This project was another good reminder that every project Okay, this project was another good reminder that not every product needs to work for every person. This project was another good reminder that all products I think the not every product is bothering me. This project was I don't know if another is needed either. This project was a good reminder that not every product needs to work for every person. Maybe it's a twist going in the other direction. This project was another good reminder that superior products work for specific people, specific users. That it was a good reminder that superior products are targeted at smaller audiences. Like, it's a good reminder that broad market targets tend to produce mediocre products. Something there. That first line isn't jiving. Designing for a smaller target audience. Designing for a smaller target audience, smaller addressable audience, allows for a superior user-centered experience. Allows for, because more user-centered design isn't necessarily in and of itself good. I've seen bad user-centered design too. Likewise, not every idea is for every budget. Sometimes, in the heat of my excitement for a project, I'll think of an idea that would be cool and a lot of fun to create. That doesn't mean that it's what my client or the users are looking for, or what they have the budget for. Projects require scope, and I think that's what you're trying to get at. You kind of talked about in the heat of the excitement. That's feature creep. Like you're literally talking about feature creep. I relearned that keeping an open mind is always a good thing, but that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I don't know if relearned. I was reminded. This project reminded me that it's important to keep an open mind, but we also don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sticking to the client's vision, user research findings, and the immediate user needs can be a much better formula for success. Is a more consistent formula for success. So there's some wordsmithing that I'd like to see there. Nothing more prominent than that first line, though. The project was another good reminder that not every project needs to work for every person. This project was another good reminder that only mediocre projects try to address the needs of every person. Yeah, something there, and we can talk more about that. So let's bounce out of that. Let's come back down here. Implement the quote section of the code. Yeah, I think that this is really where I want to kind of talk through it, rather than just go straight in the code. I would create a quote block. So I'm just going to color this in, color it red, okay? And we're going to multiply it down. So this red is our quote, you know, and we'll see it's, you know, I'll write some quasi CSS here. So not that's just quite, but this is dot quote, okay? And dot quote, I keep actually writing CSS expecting it to like do its thing. That's hilarious, Chris. So anyway, dot quote, we're gonna have border top, 10 pixels, solid, and then it's gonna be like 333. Probably not even that. Probably not even that as far as the gray goes. You know, the width here, you know, this is where you could do like, you know, you've got this thing where you always do the, you know, you do padding 10 vertical width, or 0 10 vertical width. It's, you know, I think you picked that up from your brother who does development. I oftentimes will go 80% and then I'll say margin 0 auto, however you want to do it. But basically you're trying to set like a quote to the, you know, space to the top for the line. You're trying to set width for it. And then, you know, this is really where you could say display grid if you want it to. You could say display grid, and begin to adjust these things. You know, grid template columns. Yeah, so you'd say grid template columns, and then this would be, you know, 1FR, 3FR, something like that. And then you need a, you know, and I do like actually writing CSS where I'm not actually writing the CSS because I can kind of think about it. You're going to need a left quote and right quote, basically divs. So we'll just call this one left quote, and this is going to be the image, and you'll have styling inside of that, you know, as well. And I don't necessarily, you know, there's not just a ton that you've got to do inside a left quote. You know, you could set the typography size, but you're going to need more than just left quote. You're also going to need left quote image, and that's going to like be assigned to that image that's going to find its way into that HTML. Over here on right quote, I almost think you just need, you know, quote H3, and you know, just if it's within inside of the quote, you then, you know, you have this, you know, you say font size, whatever it is, 22 pixels, or however you've got it determined there. Line height, and again, whatever it is that you have, 1.4, 1.8, I'm not sure. And that's kind of how I would structure it. In the HTML, I do think that, you know, you're going to have a quote section, and then within that section you're going to have areas that push down against that, you know. And here, this is, yeah, so this is left quote, this is right quote. You know, on this quote you might have a, well, you'll definitely have margin top, you know, 30 pixels or something, 3 rem, however your project is set up, and that's what's going to get you this space. Okay. You could also use grid gap though. I believe grid gap would work for you here as well. So maybe it's just all up in here. Maybe it's just grid gap. Grid gap, 20 pixels or something. And that gets you the space between, gets you space around. So take a look at that. And I know we'll chat soon anyway, but that's how I would structure it. I'm just going to leave that code there so you can kind of look at it and see. I want you to see the structure before you write it, rather than hopping in and writing code. It's always best to like kind of wireframe this stuff out. Okay, Luigi's in here now, and we talked yesterday about Luigi had whoa, what happened? Whoa, okay, things moved around there. We talked yesterday, Luigi, about taking essentially what was this design. You've got version 1, right? And you need it version 2 and version 3. You needed options that began to move in different directions. And what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing a very nice color palette, like this green and kind of squash. It's a lovely color palette. We come over this green, and it's kind of like this is a little more earthy, and then this is a little more vibrant, and you've got you've got waves and stuff going on. So I really see a lot of movement here. I think that this is definitely beginning to push in different directions. This almost is beginning to feel a little more like Domino's pizza for some reason. I think it's that blue. Although the Domino's blue is a little darker, and also the orange is a little redder, so it's not quite there, but it's kind of in that range. I realize I'm being nerdy, but I'm always nerdy. But I think you've pushed. All these are different. Yes, the structure is the same. And for anybody watching this and they're like, well, what do you mean they're different? Just use different colors and different photos. And yeah, but there's the priority is still there. You still said, okay, my priority is the hero, how it works. I'm going to talk about healthy choices, and then I will say that you've clearly I can't say it's exactly the same, because you've switched up like easy 1, 2, 3, healthy choices, and then healthy choices. The only thing I'm kind of wondering if this is finished. I don't know, because like the type is the same, but visually this feels like you're pushing around. It's like almost everybody has used the same image, by the way. Like everybody has gone to Unsplash and went, ooh, I like that image. I could put like type in the middle. Eve's used it. Kara's used it. Luigi's used it. What's the likelihood? But on these others, I feel like these are beginning to move in different areas, in different directions. Eve was there first, by the way. Anyway, I feel like these are moving around. I feel like these are exploring, much like Kara's. I feel much better about where you're at today than where you were yesterday. I think you're giving your testers something to give you feedback on, and just re-loop back around to that Usability Hub example that I showed a little earlier, for greater insight into how to set that test up. All right, let's see here, because we're not done yet, if you can believe that. So we've looked at Kara's, we've looked at Rebecca's, we've looked at, I don't know what that is. And we've looked at Katie. We have not looked at Melanie. We've not looked at James. Okay, so now we're on the James. James is in pivot land here. All right. So what I'm going to basic. I'm going to zoom out rather than reading directly in. Last time the issue James had was the like clashing of styles that were happening all the way through Medium, because he's using Medium as like just a really quick launching pad for his case study, because he doesn't have a portfolio and he's wanting to talk to people about his project because he put a lot of time into his project. I see Medium as like that middle ground. It's like, and Katie's doing the same thing. It's like, I don't have a portfolio, but I need to talk to people about a project that I've spent time on. So Medium's like that in between. So let's take a look here. 3 months of work, problem solution, context, Elon Musk, business impact, choosing the correct social identity. Yeah, you know, this is working so much better, James, just from a I don't have the whiplash that I had before. You know, here's interface, and here's the concept. Here's the screen that you drew for that. Here's the wireframe. Here's the final. You've showed the range. As a listener, I want to see when someone I follow is on a podcast, because I may enjoy more content from them. Okay, here's how you do it. People you follow. Okay, so here's people you follow. And it, you know, yes, it moved around from the home screen to the wireframe, but you can see the progression of the idea. I don't necessarily know if it's holding together because of this mainly. It wants to be this big. So that's a struggle. I almost wonder if we drop for like the beginning of this, like, I'm not saying that it's not important to have it, but if we dropped it to this and then made that excuse me, I apologize for coughing in the mic. If we put that here, you know, I think it might work a little better, because it's fine to have like this, but it's like do like it's just a bridge too far. Here you get you know, you come back to it, it's fine here, it's fine there. Not now, Firefox. Not now. Can't you see I'm busy? So this is the thing that I'm most interested in out of the whole thing. Reflections and next step. I have a lot of learns from this project. I don't know if I'd start with that. I learned a lot from this project. Such as how important exploration is in the design process. If I was to redo one thing, I wish I would spend more time exploring different concepts. Should Squawk be standalone? Integrate an existing Twitter app for easier sharing. These are questions. There are a few questions like this I should have spent more time answering. Save for a couple tests with friends. I did the majority of usability testing after I did the visual work. After some feedback, I now realize that if issues arose, I would have wasted a bunch of time on visual work for no reason. That's correct. Nailing the design system early. I created my first set of mock-ups with inconsistent bad spacing, color, type, and spent a good amount of time recreating them not to look so bad. Feedback is essential. This is my first project, and I waited entirely too long before I sought feedback and input from others. This is scary at first, but if I had had to get over the fear of having my work critiqued. Once I started seeking feedback and acting upon it, the quality of Yes. Okay. This is great. I really want this all the way up here. Like, all, you know what? When I say all the way up here, I mean like all the way up here, because that sets up everything that follows. You know, maybe if you put context in here and business impact, and then you like said, okay, I'm going to cut it off. But like, I really see it as something that might exist like right here in this space, like right through here. Because I want to know, like, yeah, this is a conceptual project. A lot of people are going to dismiss that right away. It's like, oh, well, this is just a concept. Never mind. James, you don't have any experience. But you do have experience. You clearly fell on your beak. Like, boop, right there on the nose, man. How important exploration is in the design experience. You know? And you know, feedback is essential. Usability testing before visual. Like I need like some labels here, like at the beginning. Exploration before creation. Like little snappy things. I realize, ooh, that's trendy. But I need to grab their attention, because I need them to realize you learned a lot doing this. And if people can see that you've grown, like, you're not a rookie, okay? You fell on your beak. If you'd done it perfect, like if you came out of the gate and you're like, hey, yeah, so I did a project and yeah, it went smoothly, I'd be more worried about it, frankly. I'd be more worried that you were going to fall in that, you were going to have a sophomore slump. I don't think you're going to have a sophomore slump, because I think that you had a rough enough experience with this first project that you basically like you got far enough down the road that you thought you were flying, and then reality hit and you went crashing into the rocks. Now you got back up out of it. Okay, you didn't like crash and burn, you didn't stop. But it took a lot of work. I mean, you start working on this. You started working on the rebuild of this months ago. Okay? You did a lot of work. There was a lot of lift to get it from here, basically, and here. I mean, the difference between here and here is dramatic. Okay? I remember seeing this for the first time and going, man, this is just a lot of text. What's going on? And to get it down to here, that's really a big move. Big move. All right. So think about that. Think about moving that last section. Okay? Melanie, you're back. Okay, so you got a live version. You could send that out to an employer. I think it's a good starting point. A lot of improvement. Also created a draft in Google Docs. The story gut reaction is readable from beginning to end. The sections, if there are sections that seem confusing, unclear why, how do I elaborate? Is it clear how the final design solutions addressed identified problems? If not, why? If there are some styling issues that we can address later, like poor resolution GIFs. Password protection as well. So, all right, let's take a look at this. And she's got trial 1, 2, 3 here. So you've got some basic styling here. Trial 1, 2, 3. So essentially, she styled up the password protection items that we were working through. You might have seen it on so don't save. So streamlining physician oversight. So now I'm kind of just going through, giving this a look right now, Melanie. I'm going to go through and read this in fuller detail, but I'm just trying to see how the story kind of comes together. One thing I'll see right away is I'm picking up a lot of your overall design aesthetic for the portfolio. So I do believe that like you're really in. Oh, we got some storyboarding here. That's really nice. Like anytime I see a storyboard, I feel like I'm going to get the story. I feel like I'm going. This has been broken into little chunks that I can chew on. It just makes it more accessible. Will finishes planning a visit. When he returns, the PI asked him to leave the binder at his desk. I guess I'll have to come to Dr. Icon's office tomorrow. So there's frustrations, and then I'm seeing like some of the initial design. So call to action, like where does it go? Okay, so this is like one of the gifts that you were talking about. It's broken there. Refine and ship. Learnings and reflection. Of course, this is the thing that I'm most interested in. After each design sprint, my team liked to debrief with an exercise called I Like, I Wish, I Wonder to gather open and honest feedback. Here are my takeaways. I like that design and engineering collaborated closely together and efficiently so that we could incorporate the new UI system into a feature rollout. I also like that we were able to involve CRCs in the design process, ensuring that we were addressing their pain points head on. I might just name them out here because if anybody hops around, they may miss the first reference to CRCs. So anything that is inside baseball, consider like just spelling it out in new sections because people may miss it. I wish that we could have challenged the status quo by making more meaningful changes to the signature flow. Batch sign-off, sign via mobile instead of desktop, eliminating the signatures altogether. However, this would have required much more time and cross-functional effort to align with clinical study team stakeholders and could have risked negatively impacting our relationship with conservative pharmaceutical companies, trial sponsors. I wonder how long it would have taken us to prioritize these changes if COVID-19 had not impacted our ability to conduct in-person studies. Though CRC and PI user pain points had existed for a long time, there wasn't a strong enough business reason to divert engineering resources towards addressing them. However, given how quickly the world around us can change the needs of a business and its users, it's even more important to be able to adapt quickly. No, that's a quality setup. That's a quality setup. I also like the fact that you clearly took something from the team. It's not like, and you're kind of using it here, which says that you have some sort of affinity for that. Like you wouldn't use something that you hated. Like if you hate it, and you're kind of illustrating to me you kind of like that team. Like you don't use rituals from groups that you didn't like being around. So I like it. I also like the fact that it also like clearly displays you've worked on teams. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this. My question, learnings and reflections, would be, I don't know. This is a 12-week project with like an 8-member team. I'm a little more okay with your learnings and reflections being at the end because you're not a newbie. If you were a newbie, like James, I was just talking to James. James, you need to convince me that you've learned something because this is like your first project. You don't have a portfolio. Like, convince me. Well, Melanie, hey, You're not a newbie. You've got lots of projects, and you've got like a lot of assets with them. You can take me through a very articulated design flow. Okay? Your learnings and reflections can reside at the end because you have experience. If you didn't have experience, I want this learning and reflection up. If you've got experience, it's fine to keep it down. We can talk. I want to dig in deeper to the rest of this, Melanie. So I'm going to take this offline and give you more specific feedback there, and we'll jump in further. Hey, folks, it's been the world's longest feedback loop, and when I say world's longest, I mean like that's an hour and 45 minutes of feedback looping. Maybe it's more like an hour and 30, but anyway. Went deep, went long, probably talked a little bit too much about typography. Sorry, Katie. That was hours ago, though. So we're going to wrap this up. This has been the feedback loop for, I don't know what day it is. It's a day in June, I think. What is most important is that you and yours are safe and healthy. Wash your hands. Don't forget to wash your hands. Take care of each other. Lost a friend to COVID, and it's a